Okay, now we're going to talk about whitespace control. In some languages, or perhaps all or most, maybe not all, but most languages that I'm aware of, you don't get whitespace in the output unless you print it out. Like in PHP, you got to put echo or print and explicitly say what to print out to the HTML output that will come to the browser, which is great because then you don't have extra whitespace unless you want it there. Of course, the downside is you got to explicitly say everything that you want to be printed out, which is annoying. One of the things we all love about WebDNA is it's so fast to code because, among many other reasons, you don't have to, tell the WebDNA when you're printing. It's just always printing. So, there's a plus side and a minus side to most everything, as can be expected. But in this case, we're going to talk about how to control the white space. A lot of us over the years, the legacy systems we worked on, maybe even to this day, we don't care about the white space. We just let it pile up in the browser. Let's take an example. The home page of our demo site here looks fine. The controller right here. Here's the block that fires when we're coming in with no particular controller defined, like for example on the home page. You see it says welcome to Appleseas. That's right here, this H4 tag. We got a bunch of white space. Just imagine this is a lot of WebDNA code right here. Switch case, if, then, text assignments, blah, 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 lots and lots. Imagine it's thousands of lines of code. And you get that in your browser. You've seen it countless times, I'm sure. You go to your browser, you view source, and there it is. All that white space, that's right here. And that may be fine, it may not. It just depends on you. I mean, for one thing, it adds all these characters to the output. A few lines is nothing, especially with broadband. But if you got thousands of lines, that's adding up to your file load time. There could be other reasons that you don't want that as well, besides just that it slows down the load in your pages. It may be that you're working with some API and you got to control the characters exactly, and it's annoying to have to clean up all that white space. I worked with the API to generate PDFs somewhat recently, and it took me a long time to figure out why it was choking, and it turned out it was because there was just a few dozen extra too many lines of white space at the top of the document, which I didn't think mattered. It was supposed to generate the PDFs from the HTML source as if it was a browser, but it was software, so it's got its funny peculiarities in its nature, and it didn't like that white space. So I had to figure out how to control that, and it's no big deal. A lot of times what people do is this. They got some code and they don't want white space, so they just put WebDNA comments like this. Here's some code, and then here's some more code, and everything between here and here is commented out by WebDNA, so that this white space effectively is stripped out from the output. And that's great, but when you've got long, complicated blocks of code, it's really annoying to have to stick all these comments in there, and it's even more annoying to try to read that code and try to work on it, and to maintain it and debug it. Frankly, I'd rather not. So I built this white space controlling mechanism. So let's take our example. Okay, we've got this white space. Let's just be sure. White space, 1, 2, 3, question mark. Just want to make sure we're in the right place. Upload, reload the source code. Here we go. That's this page, the HTML source. Yep, here we are. Okay, now of course in this silly example, it's just real small. I can just delete the white space, and that's fine. But what if I can't delete the white space? Imagine this is long, complicated code, and there's just a lot of white space in there. And I can't delete it out without tons of comments, which I don't want to do. Well, you use this white space cleaner, which is built in. I turned it off so I could show you this, but now I'm going to turn it back on the way it is by default when you get your framework. Download your framework. I gotta remember where. Okay, for one thing, that's done. I'll explain. That's not worth explaining. It's personal. Here we go. We're going to talk about utilities in a different demo. Alright, so all I did was I just put some code back the way it was by default. Alright, I reload this page, the home page. Still looks the same because browsers are happy. They don't care about white space on the surface. On the source code, I'm going to copy this, reload, find it. It doesn't find it. Why is that? Did I take it out? Yeah, I did. It used to say white space 123 right here. I just took it out. I'll put it back. Reload. Yeah, see, it's in there now. Right here. But look, it's stripped of white space. Where is all that white space? Where did all this white space go? It's gone. That's one of the features of this framework. You don't have to deal with white space. It strips it out for you. Okay, the downside is, what if you want white space somewhere, but just particular precision white space? Like, look how nicely formatted this is. You may think it's silly to format source code nicely because the browser doesn't care. It looks the same to the browser, whether it's formatted nice or not. To the user, I mean. And the browser just, ignores white space for the most part. But what if you just want it to look nice? I mean, you could have your reasons. Who knows? What if you want it to look just like this? Real pretty. Whoops. I didn't mean to click that. Real pretty looking. Stay just for no other reason but because you're trying to debug it. Say you're working on some complex code and you can't tell by looking at this what's going on, so you view source and you know you're working on this block, but if all of this was on one big line with no white space, you wouldn't be able to see this block very well. It'd just be all big one run-on sentence and be really hard to debug. So say you want it to look like this, so you can zero in your eyesight right here. Well, where did that carriage return come from? The one that's right there, after that div. Or the one after this div, right there. Where did that come from? It comes from these. And this is how you introduce white space that you actually desire. It's a function call. It's built in. It's defined by this utility right here, util wcs gen whitespace.dna, which means you'll have this function initialized ready for you. And if you want to introduce carriage return line feed, you put that there and the number of them. So this bit of code right here will introduce one carriage return line feed. And this bit of code will introduce 4 tabs. Okay, so we've got our H4, which is the page title, which is Welcome to Appleseas, right? Then we've got a break, which is right here. Then we've got one carriage return line feed, one of each of those characters, and and then 4 tabs. Okay, so now I'm going to use my shift right arrow to show you in the HTML source code. Shift right arrow will select the next character to the right of what's selected now. Here it goes. That's the carriage return. There's the line feed. Then 4 tabs we said, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I was just hitting shift right arrow. So there's the 4 tabs that were introduced by this. Then all this got stripped out automatically by the system. Great. And then we hit our next thing, which is the letter W in white space. which is right there. Shift right arrow again, boom. So you see, you got precision control. You strip out white space by default, and by white space I mean carriage return, line feed, and tab. These triangles, little symbols in BBEdit are tabs. I've got invisibles turned on, but not spaces. You see between white and space is a space character, and another space character, and another space character. And if I want, I can show those too. Whoops. I meant to do this. Show spaces. See these diamonds? Those are space characters. Now they're not showing. But invisibles still are showing, which means like these tab characters. That tab, that tab, that tab. So those get stripped out automatically. All right, if you want to just turn this off, say you're done debugging, you got this looking real pretty for you while you debug, and then you're done, and then you want it to be just as compact as possible so that the page loads as fast as possible in the browser. There's a configuration toggle. You go in your config file, like in this one, the remote production config. We'll talk about environments in a different demo, and you find it here. WCS HTML output style. This is set on pretty print. Let's make it compact instead. Compact. Upload this config file. And just with that one toggle, it should have taken care of it. Let's reload it in the browser. Looks the same. Reload the raw HTML source to see what happened. Boom, it's all in one line. See this number 1? This is Chrome browser. This one means line 1. Chrome automatically line wraps. See, it just draws this according to how wide my window is, but I can assure you it's just one line of code. If I was to select this whole thing, I'll just do Command A, copy, go back to BBEdit, a new document, paste. It's on one line. Well, it's because there's a carriage return and a line feed, so there's actually one extra character there. But see, now the whole thing is on one line. 2.2K worth of characters on one line. Close this. Don't save. Close that. All right, I'm going to put this back on pretty print. Paste. Upload my config file. Reload in the browser. It's happy. Show the source. It's pretty printed again. Command A, copy. BBEdit, new doc, paste. There we go. There's an extra carriage return. It's because I'm on Mac, and that means, if I remember right, I get these things mixed up sometimes. Line feed alone is enough. Start a new line character is either a carriage return or line feed. On Windows, I think you need both. On Unix, including modern Macs, it's just line feed. I've got this set to printing out both characters for Windows, so that's why in here it looks like there's an extra line between everything. Don't save. You'll recall from the MVC demo videos, there was code in the view. I'm going to go there now. This is the view file that generates this page. Remember this stuff on the right? All this? That's what that is now. Now you know. These are generating the carriage returns, line feeds, and tab characters that make it, pretty printed when I want it to be so. If I don't need pretty print, I can toggle it as I showed you in the config file. And if I for sure never needed it, whether or not the toggle was turned on or not, I can delete these. I can delete them right out of my view or my controller, wherever I want. See, I've got them up here too in the controller. I can delete them anytime, and then it simply won't be there. And whether your whitespace config toggle is turned on or off, it's not going to be there, because you only get whitespace when and where you introduce it with these calls to these functions, the genspace function. All right, I like it sometimes when I'm debugging and for other purposes, so that's why I've got these in here. If you don't like it, feel free to delete it. If you do your code well, separate the logic from the presentation, chances are you aren't going to mind having these because it's mostly just in the view file. And you're rarely going to need to introduce them into your controllers. So that's WhiteSpaceControl. I'm guessing that this is going to be especially helpful in precision situations like API calls to other software, third-party software, AJAX, places where extra characters do make a difference. The browser doesn't care much. Other software may care very much, and then this is going to save you headaches of having to strip out whitespace like we've been doing for years in WebDNA. Hope you like the feature. Bye.